Hi, everybody. My name's Chad Putka. I'm the teacher for tonight's session, which is called Reading Music for Beginners, Pitch Focus. I will say that I know that there are some folks who joined us 2 weeks ago for our sort of first foray into reading rhythms. That's great. Our session tonight will in some ways kind of assume that you have some of that background, but if you don't, there will still be so much that we can get out of tonight. And we're going to make sure to share resources with you that include everything that we covered 2 weeks ago. And so if you have a great time tonight and you say, you know what, actually I want to bone up on some of my rhythm reading as well, there will be recording of that session in there, some worksheets and other practice resources, and plenty of stuff that will be shared at the end of the night. But I just want to say that I'm really excited to do this and sort of echo something that I shared last time, which is that my job day to day is to be an elementary school music teacher, which means that I work with people who are just developing their sense of musicianship. And what is so cool and so different about these sessions is that many of the people on these calls have been singing, some of us for years, for decades, right? And are just filling in the gaps that are about the formal sort of education parts of reading music, despite the fact that we have so much experience and knowledge in our brains and in our ears from being singers for a long time. So it's actually kind of a cool thing. We're going to skip some of the introductory stuff that we did last time in the name of getting really into it. I will share that the rhythm session one, I felt like it kind of wrote itself from my perspective. I was like, I know where we start. I know where we end. I know that we can get there in an hour. And tonight, I'm a little nervous, folks, because there's so much for us to cover. And I'm hopeful that people will stick it out and push through the initial practice phases so that we can get to the place where this stuff can be really practical for people. So here we are. Welcome to our session. This is what we're doing tonight. Here's how we get the most out of this presentation. First of all, we want to stay muted on Zoom. There might be a couple of people helping us out tonight. People like Nate, I shouted out earlier, has agreed to be a teaching assistant on this call, and in the future, basically somebody that anybody can reach out to for questions. And then there are a couple of people on the NED team who are going to be interjecting when they see questions in the chat. If I had one complaint from our session 2 weeks ago, it was that I do wish that people had sent in more questions. I think people are trying to be really respectful of me as a teacher, and I love that. And also, I'm used to teaching in a room of people where we can talk to each other. And it is a weird experience for me to not be able to see and hear all of you at the same time, or to like really know how we're doing with this material. And so if it's like, Chad, I need you to say that in a different way, or wait a minute, does this conflict with what you said earlier, please put that in the chat, and we'll make sure that we get to it. Even if I don't see it, somebody else will see it and say, hey Chad, we actually have a question in the chat for you. And then the other thing is that there will be times when we're going to actually play along at home. This one is a little more technical than the last one in terms of the knowledge that we need to really get started on this journey with reading pitches when it comes to sheet music. But we're going to encourage people to actually engage. It's so tempting to have Candy Crush or whatever open on your phone at the same time. I would encourage everybody to really dial in for the next hour and see what we can get out of this. Something that we'll do is to review what we went over in the rhythm focus session from 2 weeks ago. So we talked about meter in music, we labeled notes with a variety of durations, and we practiced count singing rhythms in context. We actually looked at some pieces of music that we've never seen or heard before and said, how can we work out what the rhythm is supposed to sound like? That's awesome. Today, I want to give us a little start, and we have like a mini goal for where we want to get in the next 56 minutes, which is one, to label note names on the staff using the treble and bass clefs to say what note name that is. Is that a C? Is that an E flat? How do we figure that out? To identify a song's key by ear and by sight. We'll talk about what that means as well. and to learn to find specific notes on the keyboard for use in practice. Specifically tonight, we're going to go toward the goal of plunking a couple of notes on a keyboard. So let's say you're working on some chorus music, some quartet music. There are these 3 notes that just jump out and they're so tricky and it's hard to tell what's going on the learning track. That's what we're aiming for tonight. Before you sign out and say, I don't have a keyboard, we got a solution for you too. Hold out for that, because we've thought of everything, folks. Well, not everything, but hopefully some things that will be helpful. Okay, so we did this last time. We want to do a chat waterfall. This is where in the Zoom chat, you're going to type an answer to these questions, and we're going to all press send at the same time. So don't press send yet. But the question is, when do you practice music? Like, when in your life? Do you have a routine? How do you structure practice in your life? Like, where and when do you practice music? That's the question. We want to give it 20 seconds or so for people to think, type an answer, and then wait so that we can all press send at the same time and read each other's stuff. So I'm going to fully, as a teacher, count to 20, and we'll give people some time to think. Enjoy that time. All right, hit it. Press send. Send what you got. Whenever we can squeeze it in. In the music room. Awesome. If you got one, awesome. Listen while driving. Not super structured. That's pretty common, I think. In the car during the commute. Great. When you feel like singing, have planned for a rehearsal or performance. I would posit that so many of us do most of our barbershop learning in the car. And that's not a bad thing necessarily. That's a great way to use that time. I often do that as well. I will also posit that for us to advance our musicianship, much of the time, we would benefit from 5 minutes twice a week, digging in on the stuff that is hard for us when we're using the learning track, a little measure here or there, something that's tripping us up. And tonight, we're going to learn some of the skills that will help us to do that. Do you see how I kind of leveraged that seemingly innocuous chat question? This is where we're going, folks. Thank you very much. Okay, so welcome, my friends, to the musical staff. We got 5 lines, we got 5 spaces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines, and we got 1, 2, 3, 4 spaces. We've seen this before. We know that we can put notes on spaces. We can put them on lines. And the direction of the stem does not actually change the pitch. It means something different for us that we'll talk about later, but like this pitch right here that has the little circle, the note head on the line, doesn't matter if the line off of that note, the stem is going up or down. We want to go over some key terms that everybody's going to need to be aware of so that we can use some common language. I also just briefly want to shout out, I saw that George joined us. Say hi, George. Sorry to completely put you on.
Hello.
Awesome. George is another one of our teaching assistants, somebody who's agreed to be a resource, so thanks to George and Nate. We're talking about key terms that we need to know. Pitch is how high or how low a sound is. It has to do with high and low specifically. In first grade this week, I said the word pitch, and a kid was like, baseball pitch? And he got real excited, and I was like, well, maybe sort of. Another kid said, no, it's high or low. And he was like, oh. An interval, then, is the difference in pitch between 2 musical sounds. So if I've got a little melody, you know, down our way. Let me see if my my stuff is allowing. Can you hear me when I sing, or do I need to change my settings? Sounds good? Great. Love that. Down our... The distance in pitch between those 2 notes is an example of an interval. We could also say that an interval is the pitch distance between 2 notes happening at the same time. Like if you're singing a chord, you could have an interval that is a certain pitch distance from the baritone's note to the bass's note. something we got to know. The half step is the smallest interval that we use in traditional Western music trademark. I say Western music trademark because what is Western? Is Western like California? Is Western like Hawaii? Is Western like Croatia? It's complicated, but the point is that in the system of music that we use, especially in barbershop, the half step is the smallest interval. If you've ever plunked around on a keyboard or a piano, it is the distance, the interval between two notes that are directly next to each other. And then a whole step is the next smallest, which is the same distance as two half steps. So two notes apart on the keyboard. Or if you're a string player, if you've got a guitar or something, two notes on the fretboard away. That's our whole step. Why is this important? It's important because a scale is a collection of pitches arranged in order following a specific pattern of whole steps and half steps. Your brain probably already knows this and knows how to do this. Like if I give you a starting pitch, can you hear that? Great. And if I said, hey, can you sing a major scale starting there? You would probably all sing do 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 do. Or if I played this and I stopped, your brain would probably really want that to fill it in. Your brains are already musical. We're just labeling things that you already know, sort of like in your intuition. So our major scale is a specific pattern of whole steps and half steps. And right here, I'll tell you, we have the C major scale, and it's all notes that are just letters. No sharps, no flats, no nothings. We've got C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. You'll notice that the C repeats itself to sort of complete the pattern, and that is the interval called an octave. That's an interval, it's 12 half steps apart. I could play all those on the keyboard right now. That's our octave, where both pitches are named the same. And that's going to become important later. You'll also notice that the distance between these notes is not the same distance between all of those notes in the scale. So if I play from C to D, that's our whole step, and I can tell because there actually is a half step in between. Listen up. That exists. The distance between D and E also has a half step in between, but the distance between E and F, there's no additional half step in between. Again, that's going to become important for us. Let's talk about clefs, people. Clefs are important because they tell us what specific pitches are being written on the staff. So you remember this guy? This is our musical staff. If we don't have a clef over here, this figure that shows us exactly what specific pitches are which, these notes could be anything. They could be absolutely anything. But the clef is like a compass. It's like a thing that tells us what is where. So some of us, if we sing tenor or lead, we are used to reading music that is written with the treble clef at the front. And it's called the G clef because this little curly Q guy here curls around the note G. And once we know where that one is, we can tell where everything else is because it's just up or down. I'll show you more in a second. The bass clef, if you sing bass or baritone, you might be used to seeing this at the front of your musical staff line. And these two dots are always going to be surrounding the line that is F. It gives us like a starting point from which we can like extrapolate, okay, what are the pitches above that? What are the pitches below that? The clef is really important. So here's an example of, this is a ballad that my chorus sang a few years ago. Everybody singing do-do-do-do parts at the beginning. And we've got the tenor and lead part, tenor written with the note stems going up, and the lead part written with the note stems going down, with the treble clef at the front. Without knowing anything else, we know that the treble clef is the G clef, and it curly cues around this line, which means, hey look, the tenors are starting on the note G. Similarly, we've got the bass clef down here, and we've got those two dots, and they're surrounding the F. Neither of these parts starts on an F, but with that knowledge, we can put together what the other pitches are. So this is some stuff that some folks maybe learned in elementary school, maybe not. These are how we name all of the notes when we're using the treble clef. So we talked about the G, that's kind of our point of reference because it's where the curly Q is. And if we go forward in the musical alphabet, we're going up. We're going to higher pitches there. Some of you may know Samantha Tremack, who's a famous NED barbershopper. And she is also an elementary music teacher. She says, Chad, I tell my students all the time, you know, the musical alphabet. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. In music, we only use A, B, C, D, E, F, and G, no H. So if I'm going forward in the musical alphabet from G, the next note is actually A. And then it cycles around. G, next one up is A, next one up is B, next one up is C, next one up is D. Similarly, if I go backwards in the musical alphabet, it allows me to go down. So we start with G, we go down from F, and then there's E. Anything below that would follow that same pattern. It would be annoying if we had to start at G every time and like count forward or count backwards. So we've got these little rules that can help us remember. E, G, B, D, F, when we're using the treble clef, that's how we think of these specific pitches that are on the lines. And if you can remember, every good burger deserves fries, that's going to give us from the bottom E, G, B, D, F. In the olden days, or maybe even more recently, they used to teach every good boy does fine. And I think some people said, you know, we need a gender neutral option just to include all the people, but my wife's a vegetarian, not a burger fan. Your mileage may vary, but the line notes are E, G, B, D, F. And having your own version of this, whether it's every good boy does fine or every good burger deserves fries, might speed up identifying those notes for you. The spaces are easy because space rhymes with face. And the spaces are named F, A, C, E from the bottom. So sometimes if I have students who are like struggling with naming a note that's using the treble clef and is on a space, I'll just like aggressively point to my face, and that's our clue. Space rhymes with face, F-A-C-E. We'll put this into practice in a second, but first, can't leave my basses and baritones hanging. Here's what we got for the bass clef. Like we said, the dots are surrounding the F. If we go forward in the musical alphabet, we go up. That's an F, so that must be a G. That must be an A. If we go backwards, then we're going lower. That must be an E, that must be a D, that must be a C, B, A, G, etc. If you are using a rule to remember the lines, I recommend Great Big Dragons Fly Around. That's G, B, D, F, A. Great Big Dragons Fly Around. The space notes follow the little mnemonic that is all cows eat grass. Some will tell you that all cars eat gas, but that's less true today than it used to be. So, you know, again, your literal mileage may vary. That was accidental. I'm proud of myself. So, if I were you, if I sing tenor or lead, I might jot these down if you have a second. If I sing baritone or bass, I might jot these down if you have a second, because we're about to look in another place and need to know these so that we can quickly label these things on the staff. Some of you are probably thinking, Chad, I've already heard this before, but it takes me a really long time. What can you do to help with that? I've got good news and I've got bad news. The good news is it's super straightforward. The bad news is it's intentional practice that can't happen in the car. Love you so much. Okay. Is it a cheeseburger? Good burgers deserve fries always. Also works. Good shout, Anthony. All right. So let's say we want to sing higher or lower than that top line or that bottom line in the clef. We can extend the clef by adding what we call ledger lines. And so one space above F, that G is just sitting there right on top. If we wanted to go one higher, we would add a line, a ledger line, and that's our A. Then we don't need to add another line because we've already indicated we're already one line above the staff, that's a B. and then on the line is that high C. Same thing happens in reverse. If we're going downward, that's going to be our D, that's going to be our C, our B, our A, and our G. And the same thing will be true of the bass clef, just using those pitches. So check it out. I'm going to talk us through. We got a bunch of labeled pitches, but I'm going to talk through how I would figure out, okay, I'm looking at my sheet music, and I want to know what pitch that is. I'm using the treble clef, which means that my rule for lines is every good burger deserves fries. Let's look through and find all the lines. Well, the bottom line, E for every, that's pretty straightforward. If I'm counting from the bottom, every good burger, that must be a B. What's another one on a line? Okay, here we go. Every good burger deserves, that's a D. Here's one, ooh, we got ledger lines. So every good burger deserves fries, one up G, one up A, one up B, one up C. That must be our high C. Every good, boom, G, that's our G. Using spaces, we got the rule that is face, F-A-C-E, and from the bottom, F-A-C. Look, that must be a C. F-A-C-E, well, one up from E is F, one up from F is G. There's a G. F-A-C-E, that must be an E. F-A, that must be an A, etc., etc. Bass clef, same principle, right? Great big dragons fly around, okay? So that bottom line is G. Great big dragons, that's a D. Great big dragons fly. You got a shortcut here too. This is on the line defined by the bass clef with those two little dots. So you know that's always going to be an F. We got great big. Okay, there's our B. Let's move forward. I think we understand this part. But let's talk about accidentals. Bum, ba-dum, bum. Accidentals are not accidents, but this is the name that we give for pitches that are not straight up just the letter. A sharp is a symbol used to indicate that a note should sound a half step higher than it would otherwise. So you could have a C sharp, which is a half step higher than your typical C. We got a flat, which indicates that a note should sound a half step lower than it would otherwise. For instance, if you got an E and you got to lower it by a half step, that's your E flat. And our natural changes a written pitch to its non-sharp, non-flat, letter-only state. This will apply later. You're probably thinking, but if it's supposed to be natural, why would you need a symbol at all? All in due time, my friends. All in due time. Check it out. It's our best friend, Mickey Mouse. So we're going to be using this as an example a couple of times tonight because I think, one, it's a great tag, and two, it gives us the opportunity to practice some stuff. So I'm a bass, and I'm having trouble with these first two bars, okay? So I'm trying to figure out what are the pitch names so that later on in our session, when we talk about how to find these notes on the keyboard, I can plunk them out and hear them in isolation. So I got the bass clef, and I know that the rule for bass spaces is all cows eat grass. So counting from the bottom, A, C. I must start on a C. And then we sing another C right afterward. This note, all cows eat grass. We've got C, C, G, and it must be a G that is above the C, not a G that is below, because that note is above the C. Moving on, we could do a convoluted thing where we're like, great big dragons fly around, blah, blah, blah. Or we can just say, we already know that's a G, and that's one note below a G, so that must just be an F, right? We're going backwards in the alphabet. A repeated F, and then here we have our first accidental. It would just be an E, but no. We've got our flat, which means that that's an E flat. That's an example of what we might be able to apply this work to. And in a minute, I'm going to show you some practice tools. Hooray! Oh my gosh. So when I go to musictheory.net, and I'll be sending you these exercises, we've got a super powerful set of tools to help us practice what we're doing with naming notes. And I'm going to make sure that I actually share sound this time. How about that? Even Chad is learning. Okay, so I'm going to note identification, identify the displayed note. That's what I want to do. All right, gang, we got the treble clef. And the rule for the treble clef on the lines is every good burger deserves fries. That's a D, but not just any D. It's lowered a half step by this flat. So that must be a D flat. And I'm going to find D flat down here. And isn't that satisfying? It turns green. Wowee. I want to show you something cool about these exercises too, because I think that some people will only want to practice with the treble clef, and some people will only want to practice with the bass clef. Check it out. If I go to the little gear up here, I can change a lot about what it's going to quiz me on. I can do treble clef and bass clef. I could go nuts and do the alto clef if I'm a viola player, or I'm going to select only the bass clef. Awesome. And it's going to say, hey, what range of pitches do you want to have available to you in this quiz? Well, barbershop basses don't typically have this note, and if they do, it doesn't sound like much, right? So it's like, okay, I'm really only seeing stuff down to here, or I'm really only seeing stuff up to here. Then I can quiz myself here, and all of a sudden, we've got only stuff that applies to me and my actual work. So if my bottom line is a G, great big dragons fly around, I go backwards one, which would be the space. That's an F. And then backwards one, that's an E. An E sharp, oh boy. There we go. Isn't that cool? We're going to go back to musictheory.net a little later. But this is what I mean, my friends, when I say, and I'm going to stop sharing for this, I just crashed through a lot of technical information. It only means anything if you actually practice with it. And you don't have to use musictheory.net. You can use your chorus music. In fact, I know people who go through their chorus music, and because they know they're going to want to plunk something out, or because they want practice, they write in the pitch names on their chorus sheet music as a practice tool. Awesome. And so practical, right? Because it's actually music that you're working on. I highly, highly recommend doing something like that as an exercise. Will it take time? Yes. With time, will you get more automatic? Yes. Will that pay off? Also yes. Whew! Okay, there's sort of segment one of our evening, and it's the longest and most involved segment. I want to see what questions there are at this moment about labeling pitches, because there's some stuff that I'm leaving to kind of pitch session 2. If you got questions about any of it, it's on the table. No silly questions, only a silly teacher. That's me. Hi, it's me, Chad. I'm going to leave some thinking time for folks who want to think about what questions they might ask, and drink some water. Rachel, an amazing question. How do the two clefs connect? Well, I want to show you, actually. I'm going to Google something here. If you've played piano before, you may know of the concept that is the grand staff. Ooh, and the grand staff is a bass clef on the bottom and the treble clef on the top. And in fact, I'm going to find an image that's going to make this easy for us to talk about. Open a new tab. I'm going to share this dang thing. Okay, here we go. The grand staff, look at that. And here I can show you an ad for Harry Potter. Okay, no, so the bass clef and the treble clef connect because they're just ways of writing down stuff, right? This is not music. This is a silly way that we have chosen to write down existing sound. But they sort of connect at this middle C, where the note above that B on the bass clef is exactly that note on the treble clef. Where it gets weird is what we're about to talk about in a bit, which is in barbershop, we don't use the straight treble clef and the straight bass clef all the time. Sometimes we use weirdo versions that other musicians don't understand. And we'll talk about that in a minute. But basically it's these are just ways to write down pitches. And why do we use the bass clef for lower notes? So that we don't have to add so many ledger lines. That's pretty much it. It's just for saving space, really, more than anything. I hope that's a satisfying answer, Rachel, for now. Thanks for nodding. Always thought the space is for always face. The placement of the C. Yeah. So the placement of the clef changes the notes. Absolutely. The bass clef and the treble clef have different rules. How do letters work for full step and half step? Great question. So I'm going to go back to this this slide here to talk about that. I think. So here we have, these are basically what we call the white keys. That means like no sharps or flats involved. C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. That's our C major scale. E and F are a half step apart. They don't need any fancy sharps or flats to indicate that they're a half step apart. They just are. And that has to do with stuff from the Catholic Church 500 years ago that I don't even understand. Just know that E and F on their own, half step apart. Same with B and C. However, it's a whole step between C and D because there's that pesky little C sharp or D flat in between. A note that's not a part of this collection of notes. It's not a part of the scale, but we could play it. Like when I play the C major scale, I could sneak a C sharp in there and you would hear, ooh, that doesn't belong. And at some point it starts to make sense again to our ears. I hope that answers a little bit. Multiple flat or sharp after treble clef. Do every note after that change? Oh my gosh, you're on to my next slide. Amazing. Is Music Theory on Android? I think there are Android and iPhone apps for musictheory.net. Are there mnemonics for the baritone range like C3 to C4? Great question, Greg. So the good news is, Greg, that if you're reading the bass clef, that the mnemonics are the same as if you're singing bass. The thing that is tricky is I don't know mnemonics for like ledger lines above that. So like here, Greg is in my chorus. He's singing pretty high baritone parts. To know that that's an E, I don't know a mnemonic to know that that's an E, except that at some point you start labeling that as E enough times, you sort of figure out, oh, that's going to be an E every time. It's the best I got for you, Greg. Sorry that that's not very satisfying. Let's move on, since folks are asking about this. Octave clefs. Oh my gosh, boy are these tricky. So our treble clef and bass clef in barbershop, depending on where you're singing and who you're singing with, we might add a little 8 at the bottom of the treble clef or an 8 at the top of the bass clef. This 8 at the bottom of the treble clef is pretty common in choral music. If you, like me, grew up singing tenor in high school choir, meaning not the top part, but like a higher, like middle kind of voice, that means that it doesn't curl around this G, it curls around the G an octave below. And that's helpful because it means that we don't need as many ledger lines to write in my actual vocal range. What is difficult about that is that when you have that 8, it means that the bass clef and treble clef with the 8, the octave treble clef, they overlap. And that's so weird. And it's helpful because, again, if you're reading your own part, you just need fewer ledger lines to write it. But like this B flat for the baritone on the first chord of Down Our Way would exist right here on this middle line written on the treble clef. Here on this middle line written on the treble clef with, and that's just like, and that's just a thing that we know, that like when there's the 8, it's going to be an octave lower than where it's exactly written. Now, if you're looking at the keyboard and you just start in the right place that is in your general vocal range, you'll probably be just fine. But this is for the sake of technique. In SSAA, or like treble chorus music, like if you sing in a Sweet Adeline chorus or a Harmony Inc. chorus, your basses and baritones are probably reading with the bass clef that has an 8 on top, which means that this E flat on the bottom for the basses is not this E flat. I don't have that note. I just don't have it. But the 8 means we can still write as if it's in like bass range, but instead of that E flat, that's the E flat. that our low basses in our Sweet Adelines or Harmony and Chorus are singing. I just wanted to go over that because it's like a weird thing in barbershop that we don't see everywhere. But I expect that with our ears, we will be able to fill in some of those blanks. Like if I'm trying to plunk out my part for Down Our Way and I start on this D, down, I'm going to know that I've done something wrong, right? Okay, now we're talking about keys, which we'll get to the question that we got from Robert. Hold your horses, Robert. We'll be right there. Okay, let's go back to slideshow mode. Yeah, so professional. Okay. The resting tone is the pitch upon which a song's scale is based. If we're in C major, it's based on C. That is home. That note gives us a sense of stability. And when I play that scale all the way up to, but not including the top resting tone, your brain probably fills that one in because it's our resting tone. Many melodies start and end on the resting tone, and that's usually the note that we blow on the pitch pipe. So like if you hear like, probably the melody is going to start or end on a version of that note. The tonality is, this is my own definition, the vibe of a song created by the notes in a scale. Usually major or minor tonality. And 95% of barbershop is in major. We're going to talk about minor tonalities in a month when we do pitch level 2. But I'll tell you that right now we're living in a world of major keys just to give us some sense of stability as we're starting out. Finally, I've already used this word like 5 times. The key is the resting tone plus the tonality that the song is based on. It's like, what pitches are we playing with to create something that sounds like it fits together? It's usually the resting tone followed by major or minor. For example, F sharp major. That's the key of a song. C minor is the key of a song. Chad, why is this important? Well, we talked about how the C major scale has these whole steps and half steps built in already because those are all the like natural non-sharp, not flat notes starting on C and ending on C. But what if we wanted to start a major scale on F? I'm going to play all the white keys and I want you to listen and pick out the one that sounds sour, like it doesn't belong. Those pitches would be labeled F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F. Spontaneous quiz question. Which is the note that needs to be different for that to sound like a major scale? F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F. I just gave it away in the fact that I lingered on it. It's the B, right? So if we wanted that to sound like a major scale, we would need to lower that pitch by a half step. Luckily, we have a tool to do that, which is that instead of a B, when we're in the key of F major, all the B's are going to be B flats. B flat, music to my ears. The same is true of all these other keys. Let's say we wanted to start on a D. A fascinating collection of pitches, but not a major scale. If we were to make the alterations that we would need to make those like white key, natural, non-sharp, non-flat notes into our major scale, we would need to give us an F sharp and a C sharp. That's where we get into the wonderful world, I cued myself, of key signatures. This is what Robert was asking about. The pattern of sharps and flats at the beginning of each staff line showing what accidentals we use for that piece of music. This also tells us what the resting tone is and what pitch to blow on the pitch pipe. So if you see this at the beginning of your piece of music, it means that every F will be sharp, every C will be sharp, every G will be sharp, and every D will be sharp unless they tell you otherwise. This is to save space and to make the music look less busy. So that if they're showing you a flat or a sharp or a natural, it's because it's different from what we would expect. If you have a key signature at the beginning, they don't have to put every single C as a C sharp because it's implied. We know that. It's giving us the key signature so that we know that everyone is going to be a C sharp. So that's important as we're labeling our pitches, right? Because if we're in the key of F and I'm trying to plunk some notes and I'm playing a B natural instead of a B flat, we're going to hear and notice that difference. And so basically it's like this is casting that C sharp spell on all of the notes that follow. You might be wondering, Chad, what about this F? Is that one always sharp also? Yes, it is. They could have put this F sharp and they could have put it down here too, but again, to save visual noise, we just put it on the one spot. Guys, here's the key. You don't have to take a picture, you don't have to copy it down because I have a PDF for you in the Google Drive folder that we're sharing at the end of this presentation. How about that? This is our key, if you will, for determining what a key signature is in a given song. And this is telling us that if we want to start a song on E flat, all of the B's are going to be B flats, all of the E's are going to be E flats, and all of the A's are going to be A flats to make it sound like E flat major. Chad, do I have to memorize these? No, there are rules and maybe even some cheating that we can do in a second, which is actually not cheating and is only resourcefulness. Okay, if we got no sharps or flats, that's C major. We already went over that. If we got one flat, that's F major. You just memorize those two. We already went over that. For sharps, the rule is you go to the last sharp and then up one pitch. For flats, the rule is go to the second to last flat, and that's the key. If your brain is full right now, feel free to flush that out, because you know what else we have, guys? We have the wonderful world of Google.com, and I'm dead serious about this. This is that same piece of music that we were looking at before, and we have 3 flats. I could go to something like this and say, okay, where's 3 flats? Oh, we must be in E flat major. Oh, okay. I could go to a rule like this and say, go to the second to last flat. Okay, so we have 3 flats here. Yeah, there we are. We have 3 flats here. And I'm going to the second to last one. All cows eat E flat. We must be in the key of E flat. Or, guys, I'm going to be real with you. I'm going to go to google.com and I'm going to say key signature 3 flats. And I'm going to go to the regular search. Wow, thanks AI overview. Or you can go to the first dang option on Google and it's going to show you something that's going to help you out. Folks, we are busy adults, and if you don't want to memorize these ding dang rules, I'm not here to tell you you have to when it comes to the key signature stuff. So what I recommend you do is this. 1, find it on the page. 2, count the sharps and flats. 3, use a rule, use a chart, or use Google, and then write it down. Like on your sheet music. Like you could write E flat at the beginning of your piece of music and you would always know that's the pitch they're blowing on the pitch pipe. You would always know that's the key of the song and that's our home tone. And so if I'm lost and I want to hear the pitch pipe sound, there it is. Look at guys, we got some practice on musictheory.net. I'm going back home. Key signature identification is the second one down. Identify the displayed key signature. Oh my gosh. Similarly, if we go to the little gear sign, we got lots of options. It can show us both. It can show us the grand staff, just the treble clef, just the bass clef, whatever I choose. I'm going to go bass clef only just because. And I can say, whoa, I want to work with just the 1, 2, or 3, or 0 sharps and flats right now. If I want to do that for some reason, I don't know. Let's go back. And it's given me an option. If I want to practice, that's a great way to do that. Again, you could also practice by going through your chorus music using a chart, flipping through your ding dang folder, and on the 12 songs you sing in your chorus, spending 30 seconds each to look up the thing and writing it in. And now you always know. Isn't that cool? That wouldn't take a whole lot of time, and it would be a nice use of practice time. I want to pause again and ask for questions about key signatures before we get into the keyboard part, because that's the part where it really gets practical and we can actually do something useful with all this information that is not just purely theoretical, but will actually help us be better musicians. Drink water time. Amazing. How do you know when a key is minor? Ooh, that's a great question, Deb. And we're going to get more into that in a month when we talk about pitch level 2. One of the ways that you can tell, especially as a barbershopper, is with your ears when you hear the music on the Ding Dang Learning track. And I'm serious about that. That like when you listen to the music, that's one of the best ways to pick that out. I will also say as a preview that each of these key signatures, 2 sharps, 3 flats, whatever, has kind of a minor cousin, which is to say E flat major uses 3 flats. But if I use 3 flats and start on C, that's our C minor scale. I went too far. If that's breaking your brain right now, come back in a month and we'll make it all make more sense. But basically, there are a couple other ways that we'll go over too that you can see in the sheet music. I'll give you one other clue. So like, let's look at this example here. I'm gonna reshare. Yeah, and Patty, I see your question. I'm gonna get there in a second. So this is our example we've been looking at, right? And if we identify the pitches that we're singing, we've got 2 E flats, an octave apart. There's the E flat in the lead, E flat in the bass. We've got the B flat in the baritone, and we've got the G in the tenor. That's a strong indication that we're going to be in a major key just because it matches the major version of the key signature. And if I play that chord for you, or if you listen to it on the learning track, that's our major chord. If it's starting on a major chord that has 2 E flats in it, that's a good indication. Patty asked a great question, which is, how is E flat major different from E flat? Great question. So we talked before about how a key is actually 2 pieces of information. The key is the resting tone, which is like the home note of the key, and the tonality, which is major or minor. I could say we're in E flat, and because we're singing barbershop, you might infer we must be in E flat major. I could say we're in E flat, and you would know, yes, I blow E flat on the pitch pipe. But I could say we're in E flat, and we're actually in E flat minor, etc. That's the difference. E flat major just gives us more information. E flat is shorthand. It saves us from having to say the tonality if we already know what it is or if it's implied. So like, real life scenario, we're in a song, we're rehearsing a song with the chorus where like there are some key changes and they're like, oh, are we in G flat here or are we still in F? And I'm like, I think we're in G flat here. And then our pitch pipe person knows to go, oh, okay, here's a G flat. We already have the sound of major in our brains. I don't have to specify to the people and do the major version because they already know that. They've already been working with the music. They already know the parts in the learning track, etc. Why are certain keys represented by sharps and others represented by flats? What an amazing question that I'm not sure I can fully answer here right now. But I'm going to think about that and how to represent that in a way that makes sense. Eric, you've given me a lot to think about. I'm going to write this down, and I'm going to see if I can find a good answer for you. Versus flats. Some of it I think is just for consistency, in the sense of like, we had to choose one, and we just chose one. So like, we're doing the major scale. We're starting on F. F, A. Oh, sorry. F, G, A, B flat. We could name that B flat A sharp because it's also the same note that's 1/2 step above A. F, G, A sharp. But then they're going to be written on the same line, and it'll get confusing pretty fast. I think that's part of it. Yeah, we're going to get there in a second too. If you're like, Chad, what are you talking about? These notes are the same. They're different. Just kidding. No, they're the same, and also different. Okay, here's the keyboard, right? And we're going to talk about two concepts here in the last 10 minutes. I hope if I go to 8:02 that you guys won't all just like sign off. Live your life, but just saying. We've got all these white keys we've been talking about that are no flat, no sharp. C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. Awesome. And something you'll notice on the keyboard is that there are patterns of the black keys. That's really how we're going to find by eye where these different notes are. So it's always 2 black keys, then 3 black keys, then 2 black keys, then 3 black keys, in these kind of little groups. The piano teacher at my school who teaches young kids says that the D is in the doghouse because it's the one that's in between the 2 black keys that are in the pattern of 2 black keys. That's one way to remember it. You can remember that the E and the F are next to each other, but so are the B and C. But the E and the F are next to each other with like 2 down here, more up here. Hey, guess what, guys? If this is wigging you out, I got a chart for you in the Google Drive folder. It's all going to be okay. And you can even print that thing out as you're trying to learn how to plunk stuff out, and like, that will help you a lot. 1/2 step above a C, we could call it C sharp. 1/2 step below a D, we could call it D flat. And we're going to play the same pitch. That's a C sharp. That's a D flat. Why is that important? Well, because it depends on which note we're altering, right? So like, here's our good old friend, Mickeymouse. All right. We got a B flat there, and so I'm going to find my B, and I'm going to go down 1/2 step from that. That's a B flat. I could write it as A sharp and have it on the top line and give it a little sharp. I could do that, but for a variety of like music theory-y reasons, we're less likely to do that. I know that's not a satisfying answer, but like, that's probably going to be the most useful thing for us at this stage. Got a couple of chat questions. Oh, I can put some chocolate chip recipes in the Google Drive folder if you want. Or Mike can. I think he has access. Sounds like there's some good ones. Anyway, this is our shorthand for being able to find stuff on the keyboard. And it's really just an act of memorization, honestly. It's really kind of what it is. But we can sort of make sense of this way. So here are some written pitches and their corresponding notes on the keyboard. There's that C. We call it middle C because it's at like the very middle of the keyboard. And that's kind of, we think of as like the center of the pitches we have available to us. It's just an important landmark in finding with our eyes where different pitches are. There's that D in the doghouse. There's that E. There's that F. Hey, look, it's an F sharp. It's not written here, but if we put a sharp in front of it, we would creep our finger up 1/2 step. There's our F sharp. Wouldn't you know it, gang? We got some practice tools on musictheory.net. Am I obsessed? Yeah, kinda. Cool, I'm going back home. You have to scroll down for this one, but it's in the section Keyboard Identification. So you can do one of two things. You can do keyboard note identification, and it's going to say, hey, Chad, what note is that? Well, it's next to the D that's in the doghouse, but it's down one. It's a white key. That's a C. You might have noticed it's only giving me the like white key natural versions. I can customize yet again, and I can say, I want to work only with the white keys and the sharp names. There's that D in the doghouse. Half step up from D is going to be our D sharp. Another option you have is to do the reverse, keyboard reverse identification down here. It shows you the pitch. This, I think, is going to be more useful for us. And it shows us an accidental, and it asks us, find this on the keyboard. Okay, well, it's a space, and we're using the treble clef. F, A, C, that's a C. It's a C sharp. Now I got to find a C sharp on the keyboard. Well, D's in the doghouse right here, and C is one note below that, and then a pitch a half step above that. There's our C sharp. Again, a useful practice tool if we use it as a practice tool. That's funny. Okay, sorry, just reading the chat. Hey, let's find a way to plunk out some M-I-C-K-E-Y-M-O-U-S-E. Let's say this is a baritone part that I'm having trouble with, and even when I listen to learning track in the car or wherever, again, no hate, we all gotta listen in the car sometimes, I'm having trouble with this interval, key term there, between this G and this B flat. So I'm in the bass clef, all cows eat grass, that's our G. And then we got a note above A, which is the top line, and it's flat, that's a B flat. So I need to play a G to a B flat to help my ear. Check it out. Oh my gosh, look at that. Okay, folks, I'm on onlinepianist.com/virtualpiano. Hey, Chad, what if I don't want to remember that? It's linked in the Google Drive folder. There are also many keyboard apps on an iPad, on a phone, on an Android, on whatever you got, on your laptop. You can go to this website and use it. You can spend $5 to $10 and get a keyboard app that you're going to have forever. We're going to find this G. And I'm going to find that G just based on the D in the doghouse, right? So we got the D in the doghouse. And hey, look, I went to the settings up here, and I turned on the labels. So I click CDE. Hey, look, they're labeled for me right there. I don't even have to memorize jack squat. I found a G. And I found a B. It's calling it an A sharp, but I know that A sharp and B flat are sort of the same pitch. They make the same sound. So if I'm trying to play G, G, B flat, I'm going to play, whoops, is that the right one? Well, my ear tells me that's probably not for the baritones. So I'm going to go to the octave shift. Hey, look at that. I'm going to press plus, play the same note. That's probably more in my vocal range. I got to play G, G, B flat, and I might play G, B flat, M, I, C. By looking at the sheet music, determining what pitches are written, looking at the keyboard, determining where to find those pitches, and then playing that interval in isolation, I am a lot more likely to be able to practice that thing in a way that will show up in my quartet music or in my chorus music. You can do that with a learning track, but if this is going quick, it is going to be a lot better for your brain to isolate it. And not for nothing, the act of plunking, even with a mouse, helps your brain remember that interval in a way that will be more meaningful than just trying to catch it every time you do a full run while you're listening to your full learning track. So that's kind of where we're ending today, folks. I want to give you these practice resources and tell you about next steps. I didn't make a YouTube playlist for this one because I don't think it's as useful as for the rhythm resources, but musictheory.net, heavy recommendation. I do have some worksheets in there. Oh, Chad, worksheets. Well, it's the quickest way to heaven, folks. If I go into practice resources, I go into pitch resources. Hey, look, we got a piano notes chart. Scroll down, scroll down, scroll down. Oh my gosh, if I turn my head sideways or I print it out or whatever, it's going to help us a lot. I got a key signature chart. Wow, I could print this out and put it into my chorus folder, and then I just have it all the dang time. Thanks, Chad. You're welcome. I stole it from the internet. I got a treble clef note reading packet. if you sing lead or tenor, this will walk you through what we did today, and you can practice this on your own. And if you want to check your answers, hey, look, Chad went through and wrote through all the answers and then scanned them, and I only made a couple of mistakes, which I labeled, by the way. Same thing with the bass clef. Other things in this Google Drive folder, we got our links. We've got the YouTube playlist from Rhythm Level 1. We've got the session recording from Rhythm Level 1. We've got the virtual piano link that we were just using. That's this guy. It does have ads because it's free, but welcome to 2026, I guess. And the musictheory.net link. The other thing we have in there is contact info for TAs. If you want to talk to Dan, Nate, or George and you would rather not talk to me, you can email them at any time and they'll see if they can help you with whatever questions you may have. These are experienced music teachers. I just didn't know how many questions I would be getting, and I was like, I'd like to involve some other people. The last thing I want to share is some more opportunities to do some learning that are coming up. So next time, will be in 2 weeks, we're going to do Rhythm Reading Part 2. This is where we're going to apply our count singing skills to more challenging rhythms that are probably more like the things that are tripping us up in our quartet and chorus music. Like a lot of the rhythms that we studied 2 weeks ago were honestly probably on the simple side, things that you could suss out pretty easily from a learning track. But knowing how to count sing those simple ones is required for being able to apply that to the more complex ones. And then 2 weeks after that, on June 25th, we're going to have Pitch Reading Part 2, where we'll get into a little bit more complexity of how do we actually read music in real time using solfege, my bestest friend. If you don't know what that is, come on down in a month. And then I wrote question marks. So we're trying to gauge if there's interest, if there is benefit to, one, extending this series. It would have to be after July because I'm traveling, but we might extend this series on Zoom. We also might have some kind of a gathering and or practice session at Harmony College Northeast this July. We're toying with those things and seeing how people use these materials and what's going to be most useful for people. Those are the things upcoming. We're at 8:02. I'm proud of myself. And now we have time for if folks have questions. I would love to hear and help with those. Folks, thank you so much for joining us. Just joining us is the start. But remember, for dramatic effect, remember, it's only the practice that makes it more automatic. Some folks wrote in their registrations like, I can do some of this stuff, but it takes me a long time. Yeah, because probably a little more practice will help it become more automatic. That's what I recommend. Thank you so much for positivity. Pitch Reading Part 1 can be watched if it was missed. In fact, we hope that you will circulate this among your chapter. This is not gate kept in any way. We hope that Google Drive folder can circulate and that people can use it. And, they can clip out stupid stuff I said and put it on TikTok, whatever you want to do, including that. Yeah, please share with your chapters and come back to me with questions. Thank you so much for your time. Everyone, class dismissed if you like. Or we can stay on and ask. Ooh, you know what? So I will say, we were a little late in getting the resources out last time, and that was mostly because we were just sort of figuring out whose job it was and how we were going to do that. I'm putting the Google Drive link in the chat right now, so that you have access to those resources if you were on this meeting. And then we're going to have Ben follow up via email and send out that link. We'll also include the recording of this session, which again will eventually be in the links document in the Google Drive folder. So, info to register for the next 2 sessions. I don't know what plans there are for that, Ben, if you want to jump in on that one.
I had my mic turned down.
There we go.
If you go to the district website, anydistrict.org, under events, you will see, if you click all events, you'll see all of the things that we've scheduled so far. The 2 new ones that Chad mentioned today are not there yet. They will be very soon. And registrations will be up with those when those are posted.
Thank you. Cool. And special thanks to Nate and George. And we appreciate these guys. And they may or may not be on the next sessions, but they're still going to be available for questions because, it's nice to have helpers. So Nate says send us questions. Yeah, please do. And Mike dropped the link to the NED events page. Amazing. There we are. Thank you, everybody. Fly, be free, be well. Enjoy the rest of your evening.